Hey, what's up guys? In today's video, we're going to be talking about Space Marine 2's balance problem and something that I've noticed from playing a lot of hard stratagems lately. I ran a poll on Reddit the other day and 60% of players voted yes to do the other classes need a slight buff to be at the level of Bulwark and Heavy. And the reason why I ran this poll is because I've noticed when I'm playing hard stratagems, which is basically what I play 99% of the time since the release of patch 10, when I come across a really hard stratagem like suboptimal health or extreme challenge or maybe some combination of those, armor malfunction, usually if I really want to make sure that I beat it, I lock in either Bulwark or Heavy. And I'm not saying that the other classes can't beat hard stratagems. There's videos out there of other classes even soloing these hard stratagems, even on suboptimal health, on chaos runs, so it is doable. But for most players, you're going to have the best chance of getting through those if you have some combination of Bulwark and Heavy on your team. Granted that the player who's playing those is a pretty decent player, or you lock it in yourself and you're a pretty decent player. Now, if you have a Bulwark and Heavy on your team, but they're just not good players, they're not just gonna auto carry you through the run. It still takes a fair amount of skill, but it is gonna highly increase your chances of making it through the run. So we're gonna break down a little bit why the other classes are not actually as strong as Bulwark and Heavy, and what we could do to bring them up just a little bit. Now, 60% of players voting yes to this does indicate that there are a lot of players who feel that the other classes are in a fine spot, and I would agree that the balance is fairly close. The other classes are not ridiculously underpowered, but I think Bulwark and Heavy do win out in some important key areas, so let's break those down. First of all, in hard stratagems like suboptimal health or armor malfunction, it's really important to be able to mitigate damage, and both the Bulwark and the Heavy class have the ability to mitigate damage in another way that the other classes don't have. So the Bulwark has his shield, which you can hold up at any time, and you can completely negate most forms of damage, especially if you have his signature perk where you don't get any knockback if you have armor remaining. You can even tank through zoanthrope green bubble shots and other crazy stuff, sniper shots, by just holding up your shield, and you'll take absolutely zero damage. And the ability to do that kind of trivializes certain hard stratagems like armor malfunction, where you get damaged every time you dodge, so Bulwark doesn't need to dodge in a lot of cases. And it's kind of the same thing with the Heavy class with his Iron Halo, because anytime that you have a sniper shot about to hit you, or you can't dodge a zoanthrope attack right now because you're kind of locked down in a certain spot, you can just turn on your Iron Halo and tank through it, and then turn it off quickly, and then you'll have it up again when you need it. And that's one reason why Bulwark and Heavy are so much stronger than the other classes. And there are a few more reasons as well. So another big reason is that, particularly with the Heavy class, he has high sustained AoE damage, and he puts out really high damage, and he can do it very consistently, and he doesn't really need to be a good aimer or have perfect line of sight for a headshot like the sniper would need to do. With the sniper class, you really need to be able to hit your headshots, and it's really punishing if you don't, because the sniper has limited ammo. And you do have ways to get your ammo back, but it is still pretty punishing to miss those headshots, and it can put you in kind of a bad spot if you're not getting them. And it becomes particularly tricky on chaos missions where their heads are kind of smaller. So the heavy has the ability to put out AoE damage with stuff like the heavy melta, the flamer, or the plasma, and you just kind of aim in the general direction of the enemy and fire, and you get out the same exact damage whether you got a headshot or not. So it's much easier to burst enemies down with the heavy class. And not only that, but in general, the sniper's damage is kind of limited to a single target outside of the last Fusil. And for the heavy class, most of his damage has AoE effects, so you can burst down groups of enemies really quickly. And it's kind of the same thing with the Bulwark through his shield rush mechanic that has AoE damage. And then if you take intimidating aura, that has AoE damage, and so does the flag ability that does damage over time. So although his AoE damage is not on the level of the heavy class, he can put out some respectable AoE damage. And then he also has the grenade perk where on parries you can do the grenade field, although I wouldn't say that's an optimal build if you're running high difficulty missions, but intimidating aura is, and so is the flag ability that does damage over time. You can take that ability and still be running an optimal build. So both the Bulwark and the heavy have extra damage mitigation and good consistent AoE damage, where the other classes don't necessarily have that. And then on top of that, they both have 3 armor bars, which increases their effective HP by quite a lot and lets you survive certain burst combos that get done on you that other classes can't survive, especially on suboptimal health runs. And then the other thing we need to talk about is the lower skill floor of the heavy and the Bulwark. So it's a well-known fact that playing Bulwark on a fencing weapon with intimidating aura is one of the easiest builds that you can play, because all you have to do is parry, and intimidating aura still does insane damage to this day. So you essentially take out the need to attack to deal out good damage. Obviously, you're still going to be attacking, but in those situations where you're getting hunted down by triple lictors or something, where a lot of other classes would need to find the time to weave in attacks to deal damage, the Bulwark just has to parry, and he'll eventually kill one of the lictors, and then the threat dies down a lot when it's just double lictor. And it's pretty much the same thing with any triple combination of extremist enemies. And for the heavy class, as we've kind of already gone over, he doesn't need to hit the headshots at all, so that takes out a huge portion of the skill-based damage dealing. And so with these two classes being some of the easier classes to play, the other classes can be a little bit trickier to set up their high damage combos. For instance, the Vanguard, you need to always know when an enemy is on 1/3 health, and yeah, it does show you if you lock on to them, but if you're a mouse and keyboard player, locking on can be really dangerous at times because it changes the way that your character moves, and most mouse and keyboard players play locked off 99% of the time. And so if you lock on to a target, it can end up getting you killed, and let me know down in the comments if that's ever happened to you, where you've locked onto a target, not realized that you're locked on, or forgotten that you just locked on, and then you do some like weird movement or dodged in a direction that you weren't intending and it gets you hit. And so the Vanguard kind of has that aspect, and not only that, but with this hookshot, you need to have a direct path to the target to get that hookshot off. And if there's any other Majoris or Extremist enemies in the way, you're going to hit that enemy instead of the target that you were intending. So it can put you in kind of a tricky situation trying to land that hookshot combo exactly when you need it. And sometimes in Hard Stratagems, it does come down to situations where every millisecond counts in order for you to make the right play, and it can really mess you up if your hookshot gets blocked. And it's kind of the same deal for Sniper, in that he needs to be able to hit his headshots to deal his damage, and so you've got to be able to line those up, and it can really increase the time to kill because you may have whip warriors that are dodging side to side, and you've got to wait for them to hold still so you can line up that headshot, or you've got to zoom in on your gun when it's not really safe to do so and you end up getting hit. And so those two characters can be kind of tricky to set up your high damage, and that's one big reason, in addition to their lack of damage mitigation, why they don't perform as well in Hard Stratagems. And once again, I'm not saying they can't beat Hard Stratagems, I'm not saying they're completely useless, I'm just saying they need a slight buff to be on the level of Bulwark and Heavy. And then for the tactical and assault class, they do both have the 3 armor bars, so they're a little bit better off in that situation, and you can really feel it in terms of their survivability. And Sniper, of course, does have purification, but it doesn't always come up when you need it, and particularly with suboptimal health, it can't save you in a lot of cases because you just get comboed before you ever get the chance to cloak, and you pretty much get insta-killed, and you really feel Sniper's lack of any form of damage mitigation except his prestige perk. And it's kind of the same thing with Vanguard, because if you want to deal any damage at all, you've got to forego a lot of his important damage mitigation perks, and so either you're hamstring with your damage and ammo economy, or you just forego all that and you're just as squishy as Sniper, but you deal kind of okay damage, but it's still not really great. And once again, back to tactical and assault. Assault is in a fairly good place now, whereas he has the 3 armor bars. He has okay AoE damage with his slams, although you can be kind of in a bad spot if you don't get any kills with your slams and it's on cooldown for quite a while. And not only that, but he kind of needs his slams in order to get kills quickly, because melee damage is just kind of way weaker than range damage in most cases in this game. So you need to use those slams all the time to be able to kill stuff as quickly as a range damage dealer or Bulwark with his intimidating aura. So Assault's okay. He feels a lot better now that they gave him the perk that reduces the drain rate of your CHP, but with his reliance on melee damage and slams, he's still just a little bit weaker than Bulwark and Heavy. And with tactical, he does have pretty dang good damage output from range and the 3 armor bars, but he has no way to get armor back like Bulwark does, and so that makes him a little bit squishy, and he also has no way to heal like the Bulwark does. And so what ends up happening in a lot of cases is, unless you play the whole match perfectly, you'll end up getting chipped down more and more until you eventually die. And you'll see that in your hard stratagem runs where you'll have, say, a bulwark, a heavy, and a tactical, and you'll notice that the tactical does kill stuff quickly, but he'll end up going down a little bit more often than the other two classes. And that can be a big deal if you're, say, the best player on the team and you're playing tactical and you go down, and sometimes that can end up making the run end, you know. So tactical needs a tiny buff, but if bulwark and heavy were in like S tier, I would say tactical's right up there in like A plus, assault maybe A or A minus, and then Vanguard and sniper would be like B. And sniper does have, you know, if you can hit the headshots, he can put out some really great damage, but he just needs a little bit of a push to bring him up into that kind of like A plus territory. What could we do to bring Vanguard, sniper, and assault up just a little bit to get them into that A plus or S tier? I think, and it's arguable, you know, some assault players say he's right up there in the high tiers as far as power level, and then a lot of more casual players say that assault, even with his slight buffs he's gotten, is still down there towards the bottom. And I've had great runs on assault, but at times he feels kind of anemic. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments, where you think assault is as far as his power level. But at the very least, for Vanguard, I think if they could turn melee into an actual legitimate source of damage, then he would be in a lot better spot. So the problem with Vanguard is he either needs to get off his hookshot combo to deal good damage, or he's got to just dump his ranged ammo, and he's gonna run out pretty quickly by doing that. You need to be really selective on what you actually shoot when you're running hard stratagems. And so he's just kind of stuck in this situation where he's meleeing stuff and it's just not dying that fast. And especially if you're taking like a fencing weapon and you're just light attacking, you know, it can take quite a while to kill even just a Majoris enemy. So we could buff Vanguard's damage a little bit, or we could rearrange some of his class perks so that he can have some damage mitigation perks and still get some of the good melee damage buff perks. Because right now, like I said earlier, you've either, in a lot of his columns for his class perks, you've either got to take the damage mitigation or the melee damage, and you don't really have the option to have both any way that you really set it up. And so we could rearrange some of the class perks a little bit. We could rework melee damage so that the Vanguard's actually a high damage dealer. And for the sniper, I think that I've never understood why the cloak needs to have a delay to activate. It just doesn't feel good a lot of the time when you're trying to activate the cloak and he's trying to go through the little animation where he touches his wrist and you just die before you're able to do it. And so I think for sniper, he could still have that class identity of being high skill and squishy, but just let him activate the cloak instantly, and I think that would really improve his ability to stay alive in a lot of situations. And I think that might be enough on its own to kind of bring him up to that higher tier. And another thing we could do for sniper is just give him one weapon that does a little bit more AoE damage, or buff up the Fusil's AoE build a little bit. I think Saber has said they're looking at reworking some of the stuff with the way melee works, with the contested health in general. I don't know if they're gonna look at anything else with that, but it could potentially be enough to put Vanguard in a good spot. So we'll have to see what happens. But overall, it would be nice if we got some balance adjustments, because the Bulwark has consistently been one of the best classes ever since the launch of this game. And we kind of need to shake up the meta just for the sake of variety. You know, it would be cool if maybe the sniper got a turn as being the strongest, or Vanguard, or Assault. So that's my thoughts on the balance issues in the game right now. It's not a huge issue. All the classes are totally playable, but just for the sake of variety, it would be nice if we could shake it up a little bit. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments, and if you've been enjoying my videos, consider subscribing. It really does help the channel, and thanks for helping me get to 2,000 subs. You guys are really awesome, and I am still doing the giveaway. I just need to buy the Steam key, which I'll be doing in the next few days here if I haven't done it already by the time this video comes out, and then I'll select a winner from one of the comments on the giveaway video. Thanks guys, have a good one.